It seems to have belatedly dawned on him that President Putin is not his friend and is not playing nicely with him, and that he's not getting anywhere there.
Now, the two leaders also agreed that Paris would be the new headquarters of the so-called Coalition of the Willing, countries working together, as it were, outside NATO on a more looser arrangement, ready to deploy to Ukraine when and if a ceasefire is called, to guard that line of contact between Ukraine and Russian forces, to oversee that ceasefire. And the leadership, the headquarters of that group, would then rotate to London after a year. Let's talk to Catherine Philp, the World Affairs editor at The Times. Hello, Catherine.
Hi, Sean.
Hi, good to have you here, Catherine. Can you just give us any more on what happened at that meeting on the Coalition of the Willing? What more was agreed? Is there much more by way of a clear plan?
I would be very cautious about saying what was really advanced about the Coalition of the Willing today. For one thing, if you were really going to have a full meeting and moving this thing forward, it wouldn't take place during simply a bilateral between Starmer and Macron. Now, there was a Zoom call in which Zelensky and others dialed in from Rome, where there is a meeting going on, a conference going on about the reconstruction of Ukraine and the potential use of Russian frozen assets, unfreezing them essentially to use them. What made me prick up my ears whilst listening to that press conference was something we hadn't heard before, which was that the Americans took part in this Zoom, which hasn't happened before, not on this level. So that is interesting. I think that, apart from that, what have we got really? Well, we've got this idea that, okay, it'd be headquartered in Paris, then it'd be headquartered in London. I think we need to see this as a very determined and quite powerful piece of political signalling from Europe and from its two leading military powers, Britain and France.
Yes.
They've seen what's been going on over the last few days, a couple of weeks, where President Trump has started, it seems to have belatedly dawned on him that President Putin is not his friend and is not playing nicely with him, and that he's not getting anywhere there. And so that logjam of that brief suspension of arms from America to Ukraine, which seems to have been a bit of a Pentagon side effort that possibly didn't go through the White House, that has unfrozen. And I think that Europe has seen its chance to demonstrate very powerfully to Trump that it is ready to play its part. And we saw that also today when Chancellor Merz of Germany said that they would pay for America to provide Patriots, that they weren't expecting America just to hand over these air defense missile systems. So I think this is a very coordinated piece of signaling from Europe. But critically, as I think your previous guest said, none of this works or can even be, moved forward unless there's a ceasefire or any prospect thereof.
Yes.
And as we see it at the moment, there is none because President Putin is not interested in it.
Those are really all important and interesting points, Catherine, as you write. Fabrice Passier, the former director at NATO, making the point that without a ceasefire, there is no sign, and without America being willing to provide the sort of security backup to this coalition of the willing, if it's deployed into Ukraine, if there is a ceasefire, the whole thing, what he called it, a paper exercise. But you detect signs there that there may be movement in what, from the point of view of Ukraine and Ukraine's friend, may be the right direction on the part of the American president. Now, what is your take, Catherine, on the agreement that was being reached on cooperation on the nuclear deterrent between Britain and France?
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. And again, I think this is part of the same signaling to America that Europe is prepared to look after its own security. Starmer is a very cautious politician, as we know, and he was very keen not to tie that to the issue over Ukraine. And he kept trying to make a point of that. But that's probably disingenuous because actually the real nuclear threat that Europe might face is from Russia. And so it is intimately tied with how Europe responds to what's happening in Ukraine. So essentially, this is something that has been talked about a lot because the UK deterrent is much more dependent on the Americans than the French one. French, it was a Gaullist principle that the deterrent should be completely independent of the US. And so essentially you've got Britain and Britain and France trying to ally their systems and their protocols and their doctrines much more closely, signaling that they are prepared to take the leading role in being a nuclear umbrella essentially for the whole of Europe.
All right, really great to get your thoughts, Catherine. Thank you for coming on. Catherine Philp, the World Affairs editor at The Times. Now we can add to that, pick up some of those points with Sir Mark Lyall-Grant. He's a former National Security Advisor to the United Kingdom and a former permanent representative of the UK at the United Nations. Mark, welcome to you.
Good evening, John.
Mark, good of you to come along and join us. Could I put to you some of the points that were made interestingly there by Catherine Philp, putting together the fact that America was on the line during this discussion between leaders of the so-called coalition of the willing, given the fact that we've now got Germany moving towards maybe paying for American patriots to be sent to Ukraine, and the somewhat tougher rhetoric from Donald Trump when it comes to his dealings with Putin. Do you agree that we may just be seeing America moving into a better place from the point of view of Ukraine and Ukraine's friends in support of Ukraine, but also being willing to give a little bit more back into that coalition? What are your thoughts?
Well, I certainly hope so, John. It's been a long time coming if it is a significant shift in President Trump's approach towards Ukraine. And it comes at a time when Ukraine is very much on the back foot with this intensification of the drone and missile strikes by Russia that we've seen in recent weeks. So I think the proof is in the pudding, and we'll have to wait to see exactly what this means in terms of American support, whether they're paying for it or Germany or someone else is paying for it by giving Patriot defense missile systems or other armaments to Ukraine.
Yes.
I think it would be a jolly good thing.
And it must be good news, Mark, mustn't it, to see Britain and France cooperating in the way that they are now, to a greater extent, on the deployment, the handling, the orders that are given to the British and French nuclear forces of deterrent, but especially with America maybe poised to start disengaging from the defence of Europe in Europe and all that goes with that. The European defence of Europe needs to beef itself up, and that includes nuclear power.
Yes, I mean, this is quite a significant development. There's always been discussions in the sort of auspices of the Lancaster House Agreement of nuclear issues between France and Germany, but they are very different beasts because, as Catherine was saying, France has that more separate Gaullist, France-only control of its nuclear weapons. We're much closer to the Americans traditionally, and our nuclear deterrent has been dedicated to NATO. France's hasn't. So this is quite significant. I think we'll have to wait to see how much substance there is in it. Yes. But I think the idea that the two countries are now coordinating themselves on nuclear issues does send an important signal to America that Europe is stepping up.